Hi everybody, welcome back to a new build playlist on the channel, and it's Kotare's 132 scale Spitfire Mk1. This is the mid-production version, released in the UK last week in April. It's been around a little bit longer than that in the southern hemisphere, where the kit originates from in New Zealand. I did a preview of the build earlier on in the week, so if you want to go back and catch up on that before getting into the build itself, just click on the link above, and then you can come back to the build later on. But for now, I'm going to be making a start in this first episode by putting all the cockpit components together, or getting the sub-assemblies ready for painting, checking that the sub-assemblies go together and into the fuselage halves alright, and then following up pretty quickly later on this week, I'll be getting on with the painting of the cockpit and getting the fuselage put together. That'll all be in the second part of the build series. So I'm really looking forward to making a start on the kit, so I'll bring you over to the bench and you can see how we get the cockpit put together. Okay, let's make a start on this kit. And it was interesting, after the preview video earlier on this week, that someone made the comment that I think it was the instructions they were referring to looked like wingnut wings. And there's a good reason for that. Kotare was set up by the people from Wingnut Wings, so the instructions look exactly like the old Wingnut Wings kits, with the reference photographs, lots of information about the aircraft. The paint guides are just the same, and actually that similarity stretches over to the mouldings as well. The plastic parts look very much like the Wingnut Wings kits in terms of detail and moulding. So it was a shame about the demise of Wingnut Wings, but hopefully Kotare will pick up the baton and continue to give us some nice kits. Anyway, let's make a start with the cockpit, which is over several sections of the instructions. We'll start off with the floor and the heel boards ready for the rudder pedals, but we'll just take it nice and easy. There's no rush with this one, and hopefully we'll get a good result. Let's make a start. One feature that I do like, if you notice these sections on the edge of the floor in this case, those are ejector pins, obviously to push the sprue frame out of the mould. And Kotare has been really good here that they've not positioned those anywhere near the actual surface of the part. I wish other manufacturers would pay the same attention to that, because cleaning ejector pins or scars on plastic parts is quite a pain in the neck. There's some on the underside, but that doesn't really matter. So as you can see, we're jumping around the sprues a little bit here, and that's often because the manufacturer is looking to get the most out of the parts for different versions, forthcoming versions. So in this case, if we look, we've got here the Mk1, Mk2 and Mk5, so hopefully we'll get those at some point in the future. There's very little difference obviously between the Mk1 and Mk2, but the Mk5 would make an interesting variation to the kit. Be careful removing these, they're quite delicate. Okay, a bit of clean up time now. If, as I said, this kit owes a lot to the people at Wingnut Wings, we're going to have to be fairly meticulous about cleanup, because if any of you have built a Wingnut Wings kit before, you'll know that the tolerances on the fit is quite tight. So we don't want to leave any unwanted bits of plastic on these parts, otherwise we might run into problems with fit. I mean, it's a general principle, whatever kit that you're building, to make sure that the parts are nice and clean and as designed, but particularly so in the case of this, I think. Okay, I think we're ready to go with some of these now. I'll start off with the heel boards, which are these. There's a little key on the back so that we don't get these in the wrong position. These are the rudder control arms. You see the crank at the front here. We're going to have some wire attached to the back of these running back into the fuselage. I'm just checking to see if I can fit this with the heel boards in place, because I'd like to paint them separately if I can. And I'm not going to be able to do that, so I'll leave all these parts separate. Let's put the rudder pedals on. Let's just check the alignment of that. I want the pedals to be in the correct position. So that's interesting. As you can see here, the rudder pedals are slightly offset. The right hand one's further forward and the crank is forward here. What I don't know is if that means that the rudder isn't in a neutral position, in which case I'd have to deflect the rudder to match the pedals. So I've made a bit of a mistake with this one. These are the gun heating tubes or pipes, and the sprue gate was on this tab at the bottom, and I thought that that was needed trimming off, but it doesn't. It actually forms part of the connection for the piece. So I'm just going to have to take a little bit more care to get that aligned properly. So at this stage I'm just test fitting these parts. So there are 4 main sections here that I'm going to dismantle for painting. We've got the floor, we've got the heel boards, the rudder pedals and cranks, and the instrument panel. All of those need to eventually go together as one. You've got to assemble them in one go because they all interlock. So that's the assembly for section 1 in the instructions. So we'll move on now, get the seat put together, and we'll do some extra detailing on frame 11, which is the one that the seat attaches to. This is the elevator control rod, which attaches to the control column here. Kotare give us a rigging instruction towards the end of this section of the build, and I'll attach those. We'll make them out of wire. Kotare gave us two options for the seat, one with moulded in belts and one without. I've got some HDW fabric seat belts for the kit, so I'll be using the bare seat if you like. As you can see, the seat side frames have got the lightning holes drilled out, so we don't have to do that. We're going to have to do some drilling on the frames though. I think I'll leave the head armour plate off the frame because we need to be putting a yellow dot, which denoted armour plate in the RAF, on the back of this. Kotare actually supplied decals for those yellow dots, but I'll paint them, I think. And there is actually an ejector pin mark here on the rear face that I'm going to actually clean up. It's the first time I've come across an ejector pin on the kit that is potentially visible. It's going to be difficult to see it, but you might just catch a glimpse of this through the rear part of the canopy. The moulding of this armour plate is really good. It's just tapered on the edges, just to give the appearance that it's quite a thin piece of metal, which is a technique that you can actually use yourself just by beveling the edges. It just gives that impression as well, but Kotare have moulded this like that, so it just gives you that head start. Again, we've got some ejector pins that I will fill in. They're a bit deep for scraping, so I'll get the filler out and do those. I'm going to drill the lightning holes out in this frame, just add a little bit more detail. It's a bit strange why Kotare didn't actually open these holes up. They did it on the seat side frames. There must be some moulding reason why they didn't go for it in this case. I'm going to go down a step for the next ones. They're not quite 1.1. So these are 1 millimetre. I think that's worth doing, to drill those out. Only takes a few minutes. Moving on to step 3 in the instructions now, and this finishes the cockpit assembly off. We've got some more drilling to do on these two frames, and this cross member as well can be drilled out, which we'll do as well. And these parts here are flare chutes. I didn't even know that they existed on Spitfires. Certainly, I've never built a Spitfire kit with those flare chutes present. And they are quite a long way back in the fuselage, so that's maybe why other kit manufacturers don't bother with them. So the last thing here is just to dry fit all those parts before taking them away to paint. We'll give these a coat primer next. One of the features of this kit is that it's not over-engineered at all. So some people might wonder about the parts count at 117 and whether or not that's value for money for the price of the kit. But the reason why it's only 117 parts is that Kotare have got the ability to mould the detail onto the sidewalls without needing additional parts. And personally, I'd rather have that. I'd rather have the ease of build and be able to concentrate on the finishing of the model. I'm going to get all the parts off for the sidewalls. There's not too many. And amazingly, these are the only 3 parts that we have to deal with. This is the undercarriage hand pump. And we're going to need to add some cables to this, or wires. This part has the spare filaments for the gun sight, the reflector sight. And also this apparently is a signalling switch box, which I didn't know. So that's all there is to the sidewalls, just those 3 separate parts to fit to them. But even so, the detail's absolutely fantastic on these. They should paint up really nicely. And Kotare give us a full set of stencils and other decals to fit onto the cockpit, or into the cockpit. So I'm pretty confident that we'll get a really nice result when all that's done. Okay, so I just want to spend a bit of time now, having primed the parts, in test fitting all these parts together, just to make sure that they still go together all right after primer. And that's just a move that I'm making because I think I mentioned at the beginning of the video that because this kit has its origins with people who are with Wingnut Wings, that did have very tight tolerances on some of the parts. I just want to make sure that this one goes together after the primer coat without any trouble. And I'll do that to the extent of fitting it into the fuselage halves. So I just want to get the fuselage halves now, clean them up, ready for this test fit process. I'll talk a little bit more about the moulding on this when we come to deal with the fuselage. But for the moment, I just want to clean it up so that we can do that test fit. There's been quite a few comments on the net about the lack of an engine in this kit. And I think it's mainly on the grounds that the cost of it probably justifies including an engine in it. But to be absolutely honest, I'm not bothered at all about that. I think on some aeroplanes, when you open the cowlings up to expose an engine, it just ruins the lines, and I don't think there's any better example of that than on the Spitfire. Okay, that's nice. So there's no problem with the fuselage join. So let's build the cockpit up dry fit and see how it goes into the fuselage halves. Okay, let's snap this cockpit together. And when I say snap, I mean it. The fit is absolutely incredible. So that's how it goes together, which is fairly straightforward, lovely fit everywhere. And hopefully it'll go into the fuselage halves just as easily. So as I'd hoped, the fit of that cockpit into the fuselage is incredible. The engineering and design on this makes it just slot together really. There's no glue on that at all, apart from the sub-assemblies that I put together earlier on. And it holds together with a bit of tape. So I'm going to leave it there for this first episode. That's decent progress. And at the end of the video, I'll do a time lapse really of the assembly sequence for this cockpit. And hopefully, if you're building the kit, as I know many of you are, you're enjoying it just as much as I am. So thanks for looking in on this one, everybody, and I'll see you next time very shortly for the next episode where I'll get that cockpit painted and permanently installed.